There was a small, secluded village nestled deep in the woods, far away from the bustling world. The villagers were a quiet, superstitious lot, and they had a strange, unwritten rule. No one was allowed to venture into the old, abandoned church at the edge of the woods after sundown. It had been years since anyone had entered, and the church, once a place of worship, now stood as a crumbling monument to time's passage. The wood was rotting, the stone cracked, and the air around it always seemed unnaturally still, as if the trees themselves were holding their breath. Yet, despite the warnings, there was one person in the village who had always been curious. Lena, a young woman who had just moved to the village to start anew. One evening, Lena decided she would uncover the truth behind the rumors. She had heard whispers of strange noises coming from the church at night, and of shadows that moved where there should be none. But the most chilling tale was of the priest who had disappeared without a trace decades ago. They said he had made a pact with something darker than death itself and was never seen again. As dusk settled over the village, Lena made her way to the church, her heart pounding in her chest. The wind howled through the trees, but the air around the church remained unnervingly calm. She pushed open the creaky door, its hinges groaning in protest. Inside, the air was thick with dust, the smell of mold and old wood overwhelming. She wandered down the narrow aisle, the dim light of her lantern casting eerie shadows on the walls. The altar stood at the far end, covered in a layer of thick cobwebs, but it was what lay behind the altar that caught her attention. A large, blackened door, partially open, leading into a dark chamber. Lena felt an unexplainable pull toward it. Without thinking, she walked up to the door and pushed it open. As soon as she did, the temperature dropped, her breath came out in visible puffs, and a low, guttural whisper echoed in the darkness. "Leave now," it seemed to say, but Lena couldn't bring herself to turn back. Inside the chamber, she saw something that made her blood run cold. At the center of the room stood an altar, but it wasn't like any altar she had seen before. It was made of black stone, covered in strange symbols that seemed to shift and twist as if they were alive. Around the altar, in a perfect circle, were the remains of old, decayed bodies, some whole, others fragmented, their faces frozen in expressions of terror. The whispering grew louder now, but Lena couldn't move. It was as though the air itself was thickening, pressing in on her, suffocating her. Then, a figure emerged from the shadows. It was tall, gaunt, with hollow eyes and a twisted smile. His priestly robes were torn, and his skin was pale as death, yet he moved with an unnatural grace. "Welcome, child," he said, his voice smooth and hollow. "You've found what you were looking for, haven't you?" Lena tried to back away, but her feet felt as though they were cemented to the floor. The priest's smile widened. "You should have listened," he murmured, his fingers stretching toward her. "Now, you belong to the church, and to him." Suddenly, the altar in front of her flared with a blinding light, and Lena screamed, feeling the icy grip of something cold and ancient seize her heart. The last thing she saw was the priest's face contorting into a monstrous grin before everything went black. The next morning, the villagers noticed Lena was missing. No one dared speak of the church again, but every night, when the wind howled through the trees, a faint whisper could be heard echoing from the depths of the woods, pleading for someone to come and help her. But no one ever did.